author of the Hall Man series, and owner of Hall Man Publishing, and Frank Fiore, host of Fridays with Frank and the Frank Fiore Show. Frank, how are you? We have a lot of news coming up with you. Let's update with the new books coming out.
Yeah, the Kit Carson in Africa hopefully will be published shortly, and Paul is working on pulling that book together. And there'll be two books. First is Kit Carson in Africa, and then the second one is Kit Carson working with movie production studio. And the gist of the plots. The first one was, how do you get Kit Carson in Africa? Well, of course, we're not talking about the historic Kit Carson, since this is the turn of the century and Kit Carson is long dead. But uh, Kit Carson, Jimmy Kit Carson, who is a distant relative of Kit Carson, he uses the name Kit Carson because he's a rodeo champion and he uses it for marketing purposes, as opposed to saying Jimmy Carson. So anyway, he's a rodeo champion, and he gets contacted by some guy in Africa. He gets pulled aside after one of his award-winning rodeo experiences, and he just gets pulled aside, and he asks Kit, are you satisfied now with your career? And you've won every award possible in the rodeo circuit. And Kit says, yeah, well, kind of, yeah, And he says, well, look, if you're looking for some new opportunities or new frontiers, then you ought to work with me. He said, I have a foundation in Africa that's uh, wrangling wildebeests and using their meat, which, by the way, wildebeest meat is good, very good. And I've been selling it or giving it to the local tribesmen, and then they're trying to buy cattle meat, but that's being controlled by a cattle baron who's ripping off the villagers because he controls all the cattle there in the area. And so anyway, the kid thinks about this and said, "Well, what the heck?" And he goes out to Kenya to work in training some Maasai cowboys, and also for to wrangle the wildebeest and put him in and give it to the foundation. And but of course, during the process, obviously, this ticks off the cattle baron, who sees this as a threat to his business, and so the cattle baron does everything he can to stop Kit and the foundation's ideas of wrangling wildebeest. So anyway, that's the first book. The second book, and this one is based on John Ford, the Western producer, Western director, as everyone knows, very famous. He made famous Westerns. But this one I based on him, and the director in the second book is named Jack Cord, and he's having a hard time in the last couple of Western movies. They were flops, and he just has to reimagine his reputation and come up with some new ideas for Westerns. And he stumbles across a magazine article in Cowboys magazine, like Cowboy magazine, and which talks about Kit's adventures in Africa. And he says, "Wow, that's a darn good idea." So I'm going to go to Africa and I'm going to film Kit and is out there wrangling wildebeest with the Maasai warriors on horseback. And so he goes out there, and Buck, his assistant, says, well, you got a screenplay? And he says, no, I'm going to write it there. He goes out there and from scratch, he starts writing the screenplay. And of course, the adventures write themselves, especially the protagonist. He says, I'm going to need a protagonist. Every movie has a protagonist, has a bad guy. I need a bad guy. And so what happens is that he wants to use the local slave trader, smuggler, as the bad guy. And when the slave trader decides gets whiff of what he's doing, he decides that they're going to disrupt the movie making, and that there you have the conflict, and you have a number of scenes where he comes in and he and his gang disrupts the movie production. So it's kind of the two books that I think are just unique based on, usually using my crazy ideas, Kit Carson in Africa and John Ford's story as Cord acting like John Ford. So it's kind of cool. I think they're short little books, again, they're dime novels. And then I've decided I'm just going to start writing that, like Jeremy, Jonathan Smite's. They're short books too, about 8,000 words. But the Kit Carson ones are great, and I hope the people buy them and look at them because they're very entertaining.
Absolutely. And it's the creativity, Frank, of stories that are people aren't used to hearing.
Yeah, just retell. They're the same Western concept, but they're just retold in a different way, and it's a way that it's not the same boring old stories of stagecoach robberies or gunfights and stuff. So cowboys in Africa, that I think would be a lot of fun.
All right. Let's just dive into also Storyworks and the latest news of Storyworks. Frank, go into that for me.
Yeah, we just started marketing that. So what is Storyworks? Well, Storyworks is a in partnership with your company, with Paul's company as a publishing company. And the idea is that if you are a writer or an author, you get hit by so many people who says, I can help your book, I can do this, I can do that. And then okay, fine. They up your SEO or they help edit your book. Okay. But my idea was that no, I think we should help authors from soup to nuts, from developing your story, right? You get it to the point where it's ready to be sent to a publisher, i.e., that would go to Paul's company. That would edit
All right, Frank, you're freezing up for a second on that. I don't know what's happening. So, yeah, Frank, you're freezing up completely.
it's
Your
ready for
internet went to nothing.
publication. It's be ready. That's when Neil.
You're freezing up.
Well, I'm still connected.
Now you're
I'm
back,
still
but you were
connected.
slow, but keep going now.
Okay. Where was I?
About with Paul's company.
Yeah. After the Hollow Man Publishing publishes your book, then it goes to Neil Haley's Associates, and he's an expert in marketing. So to help you market your book. So what we have is all soup to nuts from beginning to end. And it starts with StoryWorks, story coaching. That's not editing. That's not ghost writing. It's coaching, and where you sit down and I work with an author, and we step through the elements of a good story, and uh, so I'm offering that coaching service. I offer a first hour free, so you could see what StoryWorks can do, and we're hoping that we can attract a lot of authors who are just stuck in this. I don't know what to do for my story, all the way to finishing it, publishing it, and marketing it.
All right. Well, that's great for sure. And I think what's very nice, Frank, is you'll sit down and work with them to really understand what arc, where they should go, and what mistakes they could have made if you didn't talk with them.
Well, my approach to writing a book, a story, a narrative, is to write like you're writing a screenplay. Now, if you use screenplay writing rules, you are writing a book, writing a story the way it's supposed to be written. Okay. It's not literature. I'm not talking about literature, that you want to go for the New York Times list or something like that. I'm talking about writing an entertaining story that a person can pick up, can read, say, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I got my money's worth, and then you move on. So my attempt is that when we talk about these things, we'll look at the elements of writing a screenplay and we apply them to writing a novel or writing a story. If you're writing a nonfiction book, uh, I take the approach of, okay, usually if it's someone writing a nonfiction book is a businessman and what have you, and you ask them, say, have you ever done a PowerPoint? You know, a simple PowerPoint presentation. If you've ever done a PowerPoint presentation, then what you're doing is that becomes your outline for your book, and it's a good strong strategy in writing a nonfiction book. And so, if you have a nonfiction book that you want me to help you with, then we'll use the strategy of a PowerPoint presentation. If you're writing a fiction story, then we use the strategies and the elements of writing a screenplay. And so that's what would separate us from the normal story coaching.
Hmm. And that's important because if you get lost or you don't have the right story, people aren't going to read it once they pick it up.
That's correct.
Absolutely. And the best way to go is going to be in the link in the podcast. You can check out and find Storyworks by going to frankfiore.com. But we'll have a link in the description of the show so people can go ahead and do that.
Great. That's good. And
All right.
I'm willing to help, and I'm happy to help authors. Yeah, I'm well published. I have several fiction books, and so yeah, multi-genre. So I feel I'm well qualified to help authors reach their dreams.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. That was a special simulcast. Also go to the hollowmanseries.com for more information on Paul. That was a special simulcast.